Good evening, everybody, and welcome to my first review in my Halloween movie marathon. Tonight, I'm going back to the early 1900s and going over the original 1922 Nosferatu movie. This movie has been on my bucket list for a long time. As I recall, it's like the first feature-length interpretation of Dracula by Bram Stoker. Sorry. Um, but the reason why I put it off for so long is because ever since I saw, I believe it was The Mark of Zorro, the original 1941 film, which I had to see for a film class. I found out that when it comes to silent films, I tend to not pay that much attention. Like when I was watching Zorro, because there was mostly just music playing in the background, I found myself just staring at my phone for most of the time. Um, Honestly, I'm not sure what grade I got on my film analysis of that movie. But anyway, so that's why I always put off Nosferatu because I was afraid that I'd be looking at my phone most of the time, and for the most part, I was kind of right. There were some times where I wasn't paying attention to the film because to me, like, all you can hear is music, which, by the way, the music is great. I mean, it kind of has to be since they're not talking at all in the film. This was before they started like adding sound and dialogue to film. But for what it's worth, the movie was pretty good. The story, you can kind of follow along what the story is, mostly in part because despite not being like an despite technically not being a licensed adaptation of Dracula, they still tend to follow, and they still followed the story like very closely. Like, it still gets all the story beats of what's basically a real estate agent going to meet a vampire in his castle in Transylvania, selling him a house. That vampire coming over by ship to I believe it's England in Nosferatu, but like he comes overseas from Transylvania to the highly populated city. Along the way, he hypnotizes one of the other agents there, kills the crew aboard the ship, and then makes it to the house. All right, and then from there. There, he starts terrorizing the town. So the original Nosferatu movie like got all those story beats down. They just took creative liberties since they didn't have the rights. Where instead of Count Dracula, it's Count Orlok, and I gotta say, the actor who played him, Max Schreck, did great playing him, even though he doesn't even really talk. He just has like one of the most ghoulish appearances for a vampire, in my opinion. Like just the pale face, bald head, pointy ears, the fangs, and like the incredibly long fingers, almost kind of like Freddy Krueger's finger kind of glove. Um, like basically every scene that he's in looks pretty creepy, and I'm pretty sure that back then it terrified people. Like that whole sequence where he just unnaturally rises from the floor, where he's basically stiff as a board and he still like perfectly rises up, or like on the ship where the camera angle is just like pointed upwards, so he looks even taller than he should. Or even like towards the end where it just shows his shadow just lurking up the stairs going towards the real estate agent's wife, Ellen, I think her name is. And then even showing it, and then even like demonstrating a little bit of like supernatural powers by his shadow like clutching over her heart and she faints, right? Um, aside from Count Orlok himself, the other characters who are like stand-ins for the characters of the original novel. Like John Harker is replaced by Hutter. Um, Ellen replaces Mia. This guy named Professor Sievers, I think, is supposed to be kind of the stand-in for Van Helsing. Speaking of, there are these cool sequences where the professor is having these demonstrations about these plants or animals who are similar to vampires, such as like the Venus flytrap traps and eats flies, or this like polyp with tentacles like lures and captures its prey before consuming it. Those scenes were actually pretty well done. I thought they were pretty cool. The actors themselves, like, again, despite not hearing them speak at all, the way they emote perfectly conveys like conveys what they're feeling at the moment, especially Hutter, and like just how almost exaggerated his emotions are, especially when he's scared. Like whenever he's in the presence of Count Orlok, he's like completely terrified, and like even the moments where his actor Gustav pretends to like fall to the ground, like for a 1922 silent film, he did in a way that looked really believable, where I wouldn't be surprised if he actually did like fall to the floor a few times. What else? I didn't expect to talk about this movie for this long, because I didn't think there would be not much to talk about, seeing as how like you don't hear them speak. There's really only like one part about the film that like that was a little bit iffy for me, but like that. But that's also a product of it being a 1922 film, and that you can clearly see the film cuts. Like the camera can be literally like on, can literally not move, and yet it shows the characters like cutting from one part of the room to the next. And I get that that's a product of film, but it also shows its age. Aside from that tiny nitpick, there was one last part that I wanted to talk about with the Renfield stand-in, whose name is Knock, where after he gets captured by the police and declared insane or whatever, he escapes, and once Nosferatu arrives and starts like infecting the town and biting their necks and everything, which by the way, there was a really cool part where a constable or whatever starts to like mark the doors with crosses, which was a great way of keeping that in, where vampires are repelled by crosses. But after Knock escapes, there's this wall of text that basically says like there's a plague that has befallen the town because of the vampire, and the town is looking for a scapegoat, and they decide that Knock is responsible. So then there's this whole chase sequence where they literally chase Knock around town and through fields, and honestly, it kind of reminded me of the mob scene from Halloween Kills, where that one like fat Danny DeVito looking inmate, he was being chased by the mob, and eventually he commits suicide. And I always said that like that thing never made sense, because the guy looks nothing like Michael Myers, right? But for this movie, and I know that, and I'm pretty sure that Halloween Kills, it was never their intention to actually be inspired by that film, but Nosferatu did that whole scene better than Halloween Kills, a movie that came out nearly 100 years later, right? Because almost nobody knew what Count Orlok looked like except for a select few people. So here it actually makes sense that they're chasing Knock because they have no idea what's causing the pandemic. They got no idea like who's responsible. So they decide that like since Knock is the crazy person in jail, that he's the cause of it. And again, that's doing like mob riots right. Whereas again, in Halloween Kills, it made absolutely no sense to have this Danny DeVito looking guy be chased around because people thought he was Michael Myers, when the dude looks absolutely nothing like Michael Myers, and they knew that Michael Myers was the guy who was killing people. But I'm gonna stop that little rant right now because I've already argued about that for like for a long time, ever since Halloween Kills first came out. So to wrap up this review, this was a great film. I think it was a pretty good adaptation of Dracula, being like the first adaptation, even though it was unofficial and unlicensed. From what I heard, the filmmakers were forced to destroy like a ton of copies of their reels, but luckily some of them slipped through. And like I watched this film on Tubi, and I'm pretty sure it's available on YouTube as well. So if you have a chance, check it out. I mean, hell, even if you just want to listen to the music, like just put it on as background noise, like while you're doing something else around the house, because it is a great film. Not the best, but it's a pretty good horror film and a great first adaptation of the Dracula series. But that's it for this review, and I'll see you guys tomorrow with my second one. Good night, everyone.